Piji commissioner pleads for help as Makuch Tut's fighters enter Jonglei. Fiji County, Jonglei State, September 6, 2025. The commissioner of Piji County, Suleiman Deng Thon, has sounded the alarm over a new security crisis after armed forces loyal to spiritual leader Makuch Tut entered his county on Saturday morning. According to Thon, the fighters moved into Ichwilbang around 11:30 a.m. before dispatching advance units deeper into Kolaliet, both inside Piji County. The commissioner said his local administration lacks the capacity to confront the armed group, warning that civilians are left defenseless against possible violence or displacement. "We have no security arrangements. We are left alone, only to our God, because God is capable of everything," Thon said. Weak SSBDF presence. Piji County hosts a small contingent of the South Sudan People's Defense Forces, SSBDF, but Thon admitted the troops are poorly equipped and largely confined to protecting their own barracks. "The forces here are only capable of defending themselves and their base in case of attack," he noted. This, he added, leaves villages and population centers across Piji vulnerable to militia activity. A challenge to government authority. Commissioner Thon expressed concern that Makuch Tut views himself as more powerful than the state, emboldening his fighters to march openly into government-held territory. "Makuch Tut sees himself as stronger than the government," Thon warned, urging the SSBDF General Command to act decisively before the crisis escalates. He likened the current threat to the infamous 1992 assault on Malakal by warlord Burebiey, cautioning that history could repeat itself if authorities fail to respond. Who is Makuch Tut? Makuch Tut, a self-proclaimed spiritual leader with a growing following in parts of Upper Nile and Jonglei, has built his reputation on blending religious prophecy with armed mobilization. His movement has drawn comparisons to past messianic rebellions in South Sudan, including those led by William Nguyen and other splinter groups during the Civil War. Analysts say Tut's fighters have capitalized on local grievances, including land disputes, cattle raiding, and perceptions of government neglect. His growing military assertiveness is now being tested against state authority. Rising fears of instability. The entry of Tut's forces into Piji County raises fresh fears of displacement, communal clashes, and the possible expansion of the conflict into neighboring areas. Local elders have reportedly begun urging both the government and Makuch's camp to seek dialogue, though prospects for negotiation remain uncertain. Meanwhile, civilians in Piji are bracing for the worst. This could be a repetition of what Burebiey did when he attacked Malakal in 1992, and it must not happen again, Thon stressed. The situation adds yet another layer of volatility to Jonglei State, long considered one of South Sudan's most fragile regions. New spiritual leader Makuch Tut advances toward Piji County, heightening tensions in Upper Nile. September 6, 2025, Ayad/Juba. A prominent newer spiritual leader, Makuch Tut, who commands White Army militias in Ayad County, has advanced into Pajal near Piji County in Jonglei State, raising fears of renewed clashes in the Upper Nile region, officials confirmed Saturday. According to Ayad County Commissioner James Chuljik, Makuch and his fighters departed Magog village and arrived in Chulbong, Pajal Payam, a move seen as preparation to cross the Nile toward Malakal, the capital of Upper Nile State. A few days ago, White Army and Splao forces were reported to be stationed in Magog and parts of Piji County under Makuch's leadership, with intentions to attack Piji and Malakal, Chul told Radio Timizuch. The White Army, largely composed of armed newer youth, has fought alongside the SPLA opposition, SPLAO, against government forces in Upper Nile since early this year. Chul said all attempts to engage Makuch in dialogue had failed. The state governor, Dr. Repatriation Koch, was planning to visit Ayad for dialogue, but Makuch is not ready for talks. Instead, he moved closer to Piji, which indicates preparations for conflict, he explained, adding that he had warned the governor not to travel and reported the developments to higher authorities. On Friday, Upper Nile State Governor Lieutenant General James Koang Chul publicly cautioned against renewed fighting, urging Jonglei authorities to help de-escalate the situation. Jonglei Governor's press secretary, Manith Gaini Lul, also denied reports that Repatriation Koch had recently met Makuch in Ayad, clarifying that videos circulating online were old. Meanwhile, SPLAIO commanders in Piji could not immediately be reached for comment. South Sudan has witnessed rising instability since February 2025, when clashes erupted between the South Sudan People's Defense Forces, SSPDF, and the White Army in Nasir County, Upper Nile State. The crisis has been compounded by the detention of SPLMIO leader Riek Machar, who has remained under house arrest in Juba since March 26. The government accuses him of fueling the violence, charges his supporters call politically motivated. Several of his close allies, including SPLAIO Chief of General Staff General Gabriel Duplam, are also in detention. Makuch Tut has conditioned any halt to his advance on the release of Machar and General Duplam, both native sons of Areaa County. Makuch gives South Sudan only one condition: either to release Dr. Riek and his team or continue fighting. That is the only solution. September 7, 2025. Wonker. South Sudan's army on Saturday said it has captured the strategic border area of Wonker in the Ruwing administrative area from opposition SPLAIO forces, marking the first change of control in 8 years. This comes just days after the SSPDF captured Tonga, the headquarters of neighboring Paniakang County in Upper Nile State. The South Sudan People's Defense Forces, SSPDF, said it took control of Wonker from the Sudan People's Liberation Army in opposition, SPLAIO, in what it described as operations without losses. Wonker borders Sudan's South Kordofan State to the north, Upper Nile State, Paniakang County, to the east, Jonglei State to the southeast, and Unity State to the south and west. General Kong Thao, SSPDF Deputy Chief of Defense for Operations, visited Wonker on Saturday to inspect the area. He told Radio Tamazuj that the area was captured on Friday afternoon. The area of Wonker was liberated without losses, and our forces have high morale. What remains is to clear the route from here to Tonga. After that, nothing will be left, he said. We want to close our borders to block any support with ammunition from the enemies of peace. We appeal to citizens to return to the liberated area, but without carrying guns. We want to silence the guns in this country so that people can focus on production, farming, and cattle rearing, without fear of insecurity. Major General Adon Kwol Dao, commander of operations in SSPDF Division 4, echoed the same message and praised the morale of the troops. He urged opposition forces to lay down their arms. We call on those still fighting the government to stop. People are tired of war. It is senseless to continue killing each other in our own country, he said. He added that families of opposition soldiers found in Wonker would be treated humanely, calling them innocent civilians. Separately, James Monoluak Majok, Minister of Information in the Ruwing administrative area, issued a statement on Friday confirming Wonker's capture. The government of Areaa congratulates the gallant SSPDF forces for their bravery and dedication in restoring peace and stability, the statement read. SSPDF troops reportedly discovered several families, including women, children, and elderly people believed to be relatives of SPLAIO soldiers who had withdrawn from the area, living in difficult humanitarian conditions. Women, children, and elderly people believed to be relatives of SPLAIO soldiers found in Wonker. The SPLAIO could not immediately be reached for comment. Both the SSPDF and SPLAIO are signatories to the 2018 revitalized Agreement on the Resolution of the Conflict in South Sudan, Areaa, which aimed to end a 5-year civil war that killed an estimated 400,000 people. However, key provisions of the agreement, including the unification of forces, the drafting of a permanent constitution, and plans for national elections, remain largely unimplemented. President Salva Kiir, First Vice President, and SPLMIO leader Riek Machar, who is currently in detention, and other political leaders signed the deal. The United Nations has warned that the country risks sliding back into full-scale conflict. The United States and other Western embassies have repeatedly urged the transitional government to de-escalate tensions. Tensions are rising in Jonglei State as White Army militias led by a prominent Nuer spiritual leader, Makuch Tut, advance closer to Piji County. Local officials say Makuch left Magog village earlier this week and arrived in Chulbong, in Pajal Payam, on Friday evening. His movement is seen as a signal of preparations to attack Piji and possibly cross the Nile toward Malakal, the capital of Upper Nile State. Areaa County Commissioner James Chul told Radio Tamazuj that peace efforts have failed. He said Governor Riek Gaikok had planned to travel to Areaa for dialogue, but Makuch rejected talks and instead moved his forces closer to the front line. The White Army, made up mostly of newer youth, has been fighting alongside Riek Machar's Splaio against government forces in the Upper Nile region since earlier this year. Upper Nile Governor, Lieutenant General James Koang Chul, has warned against renewed clashes and appealed to Jonglei authorities to help de-escalate the situation. Jonglei officials insist peace efforts are ongoing and deny reports that Governor Riek Gai recently met Makuch. Meanwhile, Splaio commanders in Piji have not commented. Makuch is demanding the release of First Vice President Riek Machar, who has been under house arrest in Juba since March, along with Splaio Chief of General Staff, General Gabriel Duplam. Both men, like Makuch, hail from Areaa County. Observers fear the White Army's latest advance could ignite a fresh wave of fighting in Piji and threaten the already fragile peace in Upper Nile. This is Go Explore 251. Subscribe the channel so we'll keep you updated as the situation develops. A Mexican national who was wrongfully deported from the United States to South Sudan in July was repatriated on Saturday, officials in Juba and Mexico confirmed. Jesus Muñoz Gutierrez was among 8 individuals sent to South Sudan on July 5, though only one of them is a South Sudanese citizen. The others are from Mexico, Cuba, Myanmar, Vietnam, and Laos. Before boarding a flight at Juba International Airport, Gutierrez thanked South Sudan for its hospitality. "I want to say thank you for treating me well. God bless South Sudan," he told reporters. "I will come soon to visit South Sudan again. Very beautiful people here." But he sharply criticized U.S. authorities for mishandling his deportation. "I finished my time in the United States. They were supposed to send me back to Mexico, but they did it wrong and sent me to South Sudan," he said. "Basically, they kidnapped me." At a press briefing, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs confirmed Gutierrez's repatriation was carried out in partnership with the Mexican government. Ambassador Apuk Ayul Mayan, the ministry spokesperson, said his case was resolved in less than 2 months and emphasized Juba's readiness to repatriate the remaining 6 third-country nationals. "This is an important day because it demonstrates South Sudan's commitment to working with partner governments to ensure all deportees are safely reunited with their families," Mayan said. Mexican ambassador-designate Alejandro Estevil Castro, who accompanied Gutierrez on his return, praised South Sudan for its cooperation. "We worked very closely with the government of South Sudan to complete the proper documentation and all necessary procedures," he said. "This is a successful story, and we are sure it will strengthen bilateral relations between Mexico and South Sudan." South Sudan's foreign ministry said it will continue coordinating with foreign governments to repatriate the remaining deportees. The U.S. deportations, carried out after a June Supreme Court ruling permitting the removal of non-citizens with criminal records even if their home countries refuse to accept them, drew criticism in Juba over a lack of transparency. The 8 deportees were convicted of crimes including murder, sexual assault, and robbery. They include Enrique Arias Hierro, Cuba; Jose Manuel Rodriguez Quiñones, Cuba; Thongse Nilakout, Laos; Jesus Muñoz Gutierrez, Mexico; Dien Peter Domak, South Sudan; Hyo Maya, Myanmar; Nyo Myint, Myanmar; Tuan Ton Phan, Vietnam. U.S. officials said most of their home countries had refused to take them back. Mabior Garang returns to Juba amid speculation over possible appointment. Juba, September 7, 2025. Captain Mabior Garang de Mabior, son of the late Dr. John Garang de Mabior, the founding father of South Sudan, has returned to Juba after years of political engagement abroad. His arrival has sparked widespread speculation that he may soon be entrusted with a senior role in government, possibly within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. Mabior, who has been an outspoken political figure since the country's independence, previously held senior positions in the SPLM in opposition, SPLMIO, and served briefly as Minister of Water Resources and Irrigation in the 2016 transitional government, known for his strong views on governance, reform, and the unfinished vision of his father. Mabior's return comes at a time when the ruling SPLM is preparing for a generational transition. In recent months, the children of liberation leaders and senior Officials have been steadily elevated into influential positions. President Salva Kiir's daughter, Adut Salva Kiir, was appointed special envoy. Kwol Manyang's daughter now serves as a minister. Dr. Wani Iga's son was made a county commissioner. And Joseph Lago's daughter, Angelina Joseph, was named vice president. Observers say Mabiyer's re-entry into the political scene could further cement the trend of dynastic politics in South Sudan. Mabiyer is not just anyone. He carries the legacy of Dr. John Garang, whose vision of a united and prosperous South Sudan still resonates, said a Juba-based political analyst. If he is appointed, it will be both symbolic and strategic for the SPLM as it seeks to pass the torch to the next generation. While no official announcement has been made regarding Mabiyer's role, sources close to the SPLM leadership suggest that discussions are underway. Reports indicate that Mabiyer has expressed interest in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, a portfolio he views as essential for repositioning South Sudan's international image after years of conflict and political instability. Reactions to his return have been mixed. Supporters argue that Mabiyer's education, international exposure, and political experience position him well for a leadership role. Critics, however, increasing dominance of political families risks sidelining merit-based appointments and entrenching nepotism in the country's fragile governance structures. For now, Mabiyer remains in Juba, holding private consultations with senior SPLM officials and allies. Whether his presence marks the beginning of a new political chapter for him and for South Sudan will become clearer in the coming weeks. Captain Mabiyer mentioned on his speech that politics is a dirty game which I don't want to return to as I became a businessman for some years now. I don't get interest to return to politics. Caution that but my country and the people need me. So I have to come do the things for them, but not for my benefits. SPLAIO claims victory in deadly Tambra clash as tensions escalate across South Sudan. September 6, 2025, Juba/Tambra. The Sudan People's Liberation Army in opposition, SPLAIO, has claimed victory over government forces in a deadly confrontation in Nadiam Apayam, Tambra County, Western Equatoria State, amid a resurgence of violence across multiple regions of South Sudan. The attack, which occurred Thursday morning, comes less than a month after President Salva Kiir appointed James Altai Burebiey of the SPLM as governor of Western Equatoria, replacing Alfred Futuyo of the SPLM-IO. The contested leadership shift has heightened political and security tensions in the already fragile state, where power-sharing arrangements under the 2018 peace agreement remain under strain. In a statement issued Friday, SPLAIO spokesperson Colonel Paul Gabriel said opposition fighters launched a sustained attack on a South Sudan People's Defense Forces (SSPDF) base around 10 a.m. The group reported seizing 13 AK-47 rifles, 2 PKM machine guns, and a rocket-propelled grenade launcher. According to the SPLAIO, 9 government soldiers, including their commander, were killed, while the opposition lost 1 fighter. The SPLAIO would also like to distance itself from the baseless, trending propaganda of disarming UNMISS force in Tambra, Colonel Lam added, stressing that the movement respects the mandate of the United Nations mission in South Sudan, UNMISS, and the role of humanitarian agencies. The government has not yet issued a response, and independent verification of casualty figures remains difficult due to restricted access to the conflict zone. The Tambra clash is the latest in a series of confrontations between the two sides. In August, heavy fighting erupted in Longchuk County, Upper Nile State, causing significant casualties. Earlier this year, clashes were also reported in central Equatoria and Jonglei, fueling concerns of a return to widespread conflict. Observers warn the resurgence of violence reflects the fragility of the ceasefire and the incomplete implementation of the revitalized peace agreement. Edmund Yekini, executive director of the Community Empowerment for Progress organization, CEPO, cautioned Thursday that South Sudan risks sliding back into full-scale war unless leaders abandon military options in favor of dialogue. Communities in Tambra remain among the hardest hit, enduring repeated cycles of displacement, destruction of property, and worsening humanitarian conditions. Despite repeated assurances of commitment to peace, the renewed battles highlight unresolved disputes within South Sudan's transitional arrangements. Regional and international actors, including UNMISS, continue to urge all parties to settle differences at the negotiating table rather than on the battlefield. The governor of South Sudan's Upper Nile state has warned the White Army, an armed group of newer youth led by spiritual leader Makuch Tut against advancing from Jonglei state to launch an attack on Malakal, the Upper Nile capital. Earlier this week, the White Army and forces from the Sudan People's Liberation Army in opposition, SPLA, loyal to detained First Vice President Riek Machar, were stationed in Magog village in Areaa County and parts of Piji County. The forces are reportedly under the command of Makuch Tut. In a briefing to reporters in Malakal on Friday, Upper Nile Governor Lieutenant General Kames Koang Chul said he had received intelligence that a force under Makuch's leadership, currently in Areaa, is preparing to move through Piji County and across the Nile to attack Malakal. He said the security situation in Upper Nile remains relatively stable, but warned of the threat emanating from northern Jonglei. The main source of insecurity for Upper Nile comes from Jonglei, especially northern Jonglei areas of Piji, Fengak, and Areaa, Koang said. There are reports that spiritual leader Makuch is doing mobilization in Areaa to attack Piji and cross the river Nile to attack Malakal. So this is the plan that is being planned, he added. We urge the authorities in Jonglei to talk to Makuch because insecurity is always caused by northern Jonglei. I appeal to the authorities of Jonglei to come closer to the side of Areaa and Nile to control the security situation. Popular newer spiritual leader Makuch Tut performing a ritual in the past. Koang noted that Malakal is sheltering many civilians who fled insecurity in other parts of Upper Nile and Jonglei, and urged those planning an attack to consider the humanitarian impact. My message to those who are planning to come and fight in Malakal: why are you coming to this far area to come and fight? Why are you not fighting in Areaa if you want fighting? Also, go and fight in Bor and within Jonglei state. Don't come to displace people in a different area. Also, the government will not allow this to happen, he said. Koang also warned the forces led by the spiritual leader of consequences if they attack Malakal, urging them instead to focus on farming and return to their areas. As you can see now, farming is doing well in Malakal and the nearby areas, and people are waiting for harvest in October, he said. He said the economic situation in Upper Nile is worsening due to insecurity, particularly roadblocks in opposition-controlled areas. However, he emphasized the government's willingness to negotiate with the White Army to prevent further violence. The security situation is stable in Upper Nile, but the challenge is the economy. Stop fighting so that the economy can stabilize in the state, he said. Breaking news. SSPDF Division 2 announces full preparedness to counter White Army threats. Juba, September 7, 2025. The South Sudan People's Defense Forces, SSPDF, has announced that more than 25,000 troops from Division 2 have been placed on high alert in response to rising threats from White Army militias mobilizing along the Upper Nile state border. According to senior military officials in Juba, the deployment is part of a wider security strategy to protect civilians, secure trade routes, and deter further escalation of violence in the rest of Upper Nile and Jonglei regions. The SSPDF is fully committed to the safety and stability of our citizens. Any attempt by militias to destabilize our communities will be met with a decisive response, a spokesperson for Division 2 told state media on Sunday. Rising tensions in Upper Nile. The announcement comes amid growing fears of renewed large-scale clashes following reports that the White Army, a loose newer youth militia, has been mobilizing under the influence of spiritual leader Makuch Tut in Jonglei state. In recent weeks, local authorities in Areaa, Piji, and parts of Upper Nile have raised alarms over advancing White Army units, warning that the mobilization threatens to ignite ethnic violence and disrupt fragile peace in the region. Military confidence. The SSPDF insists that its forces are well-trained and fully equipped to counter any militia advances. Officials emphasize that Division 2's troops have been strategically deployed in defensive positions along key border points, river crossings, and vulnerable towns. We have over 25,000 disciplined soldiers ready to protect our people. The army is not provoking conflict, but we will not allow any armed group to terrorize civilians, the statement added. Civilian concerns. Despite the reassurances, civilians in Upper Nile and Jonglei remain anxious. Community leaders have appealed to both the government and opposition groups to de-escalate tensions, warning that another wave of conflict could lead to mass displacement and humanitarian catastrophe. Humanitarian agencies operating in the region have already reported increased population movements in anticipation of possible clashes. Political implications. Analysts note that the White Army's resurgence and the SSBDF show of force highlight the fragile nature of South Sudan's peace process, with militia mobilizations threatening to undermine years of negotiation and reconciliation. For now, the army maintains that peace and security will prevail, but the situation remains tense as both sides brace for potential confrontation.
Mala mendid liang kaden, achile de te long ka tadun kel kane, achine ban kaya kala te tatu gone de ente liangkan, alat so kala to go ki dandial, anay kona ting kentin to watam re wika kasal Sudan, kanara raga nit ke juba, akore wini katetiana tin tieka ka case tenika, au kuona ka kontenika, tin kona laro dien tam ne konka, ke joy no cheta garami chuang no ara lebon tama aram chara jumat kel kan no tun konden tin goro de no ara tege chiang mala ke tege chiri chiang de ko lar de ko pargane de ko ke ammo guk de angan charo Makuch Tut deram en chuang no ara che lep ko che mo gang no chana goro no bar neko baka yak etaneten Jakor cha mogya, cherga manay kona, na pan keja, o cha tat pin ke dide, micho pek dien, neti kino wel karo dien, chang la ne yo, chua te magagya naten, jas liangani ya katan dong le ne ya keja, en kan wan ro karo dien kan wan to kona jal ke wun jale Makuch. Kata danak di dong gel kaka, re kay dua wichiga tat pinten kan jel kan ko bikan war bikan ga jakun lor di ya ka mandana chaka ya ka ya ke me ya ka ke jantama to talk and to up to kon ngai no chi gabana dung apan state che lar che top bilare ne de kon jel ke un jala Makuch Tut jo ken wo chine goro no bia chop de monda Daluno mo ala dalu pek mon Jonglei krada achine goro no biaban mona konja panal jaraya mo che kun pinke media an kala de jela kamane je Makuch kena nega to kone jar ka ker araya mo aran mi chore jam ngai kona a Burebiey ne pan keje cheta kor mi chira toga matan an kore chira toga mat kor ma jaw mele mantama che yojano and I kana de kuma ne SSPDF kana UPDF kelen te kel tin te wi yer ko Burebiey a che kam den che te ko kor mutat ke chawo mele mantama a kor mo we kamere broda a ko ne to kon la de ni kuma kila de Uganda kana de South Sudan cha la SSPDF antama wa ko mun na ka tanken ko mu kwel karodien re mo no mo anamone emilero den tamre wake Burebiey en ho kwal de ni ton kon la de ni ku mete che bon mi yer kwal karo den ko chi chang ke bet na kan siang a ka chire en dan la kan non kon che kan te che le nyur tan kon no anamo che de ni che ga jago dala lo tam ko kan chi ga tel kon ke che pinje tel te che te piu a talabam go gaten ka kan bo chi ko malian che kan dak Canada kon la jirol bun tala milel la non ke tajer kon la tajer bun ko kan tajer bun kan techi kan ka gat ka med tokan banre wejene no ma chatal maliche non tala bun buka yeram tamma kare ndande kul non kan che kan chire chaba ko de kul non tayen dande kan ko le cham ngwa to da dan yurgatan an ka kore je to pan chai la no kor dan la tan tu yer Manano kure rei la nyur kuda. Malal ko tere nyur kuda ko ba kwablo ko ne jenon ka kwinan dropa wakanon. Awan kor mo pancha boko kador Piji ka. La kor mo kwende sa wang. la chala ngor la tuna tana tam akan toy kere nyata tam kere pine a chi tanken wana wa chi gro pal ka tan dan chuga ka wi yeron wamo an kana sar wana wajan na ka biam ana mo ajana to wan tam re which ka Burebiey ko kana sar kor mo jaten kor me la ro dan tam kam deni aiwo kana deni kuma ka deni aiwo lat kene no deka u ka wom mo kan re which ka nasar ko deka nasar deka ne yaw kana ko ka makal ka de del ka makwaji bona de kwich pigi ke Piji we ka ban bo ka makal lat kene o gwan dana gur kana bukani chongten ajan rek makal ne pan ke ja abana pan ba ko wala chineta mwana long che go ray yun mis ko china dwal ket ke de dana ba manon kor ay we ka makal chineta mwana long che ke tek den ke che garo lok ray kal yun mis an che dul ken tikana ko tung yak pinten ke amne ken no kaneta bil ya bongamo man mi ta gwe no che wet cha ta mal ke chineta chikanu ban ko bi ko kor bukan nong ray ragandit kanasar namo ajana toga la rodan tam korwe ko muwe go nyam kaman ja kurko brother men chala no mukando kare mo char kan nega dial taga yen kel mukan ko konduin sine kor sine ba kapchon kata na ne chala keja akwara ayo ke dena ayo ko ka Makuch Tut kana neka melaguk guk noar man jel kana neka kel right dena lat kena jen wo makan kwan doctor ek mo char makan kon luin kena neka kel ai chine koro mo chine bakakcho no mo jaro de la rodan tam kata kwano to kai wike juga an wala bochi gat kwar ni doctor John Garang de mabiur ni captain mabiur chaban ray wike juba kata dan wike ray wike juba che lar no beko chaje chal ko te ko kom gur ko ba kamja jan bora e roi de me chalat chala de no jan chilo de jagoro no dar link politic de no chine te wana long kut ken ja ko gur ko dar link kuma da we dar beladeka kai chata resistan mu dire long ko dar link kal da like politic ko jan chawa business man re we ka Kenya la da te ka company mi chalepten an kompen no mo agriculture da de wal ke tin la tal ga lang tomato ni ko karabo ni ko gomen ko ni ga to ken akala de tisiana bon ka tai dankina kwarte wal de che stagal ko kimon sa Sudan che tisiana ken te ga lat la ka ko ga jan te gwe we charo lam de ku ni urijan dara ku gor bizina na ka duno cha mot ko mi chal ga de jago no dara we dara bla de ka Chana chawan kamera na wan chana chilo de lu de goro de lu ka politik dinu chamot kamalange antama chawara ira ka juba ako batanda na gurja go gor alajan an checho pray wiki juba kon wa bu kon galin ka kide kata dan dang chai chal yo ka je ku dong de jo muy kalat cher ka do bala de ya kija mot de kan da to bu kon galin Antama ray wike juba ray wike Burebiey ate ko kon dirlo at fronni kana to antama chimbara tek gurdun kene datama